It's not always the smartest people who have the ability to influence or persuade or to move the needle, right? That's going to impact the masses. Welcome to Leadership Sovereignty. I'm your host, Terry Baylor, along with Ralph Owens. And today we revisit a favorite topic, EQ. We discuss self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, motivation and relationship management, and empathy. Enjoy the show.
And we are live. Hello, world.
Good morning. Good morning.
Right. Back with another exciting show. Ralph and Terry here with you this week. We decided to go back to a topic that we visited once already, but it's so powerful. It has been so powerful in our lives and in our journeys that we felt like it was worth revisiting again. And the title of this show is going to be How Emotional Intelligence Can Transform Your Leadership. Right. So we've dug into the purpose of leadership, why leadership is important. So I think everyone who follows us already is aware of that. However, what are some of these tools that can enable you to be that transformational leader? And emotional intelligence is one of the top, on my list. But Terry, what do you think?
Yeah, most people think you got to be smart, and being smart is important. But what we've recognized and noticed in our careers, as well as just outside of our careers, we've looked at, let's just use the president, for instance, right? It's not always the smartest people who have the ability to influence or persuade or to move the needle, right? That's going to impact the masses, right? Mm-hmm. Typically the person with the IQ, will have the ability to impact, that person that's in front of them, right? Or that situation, right? That's directly in front of them. But how do you influence over generations even, right? I mean, that's a whole nother concept. How is what you're doing impacting just right now in your moment? Or does it have the ability to transcend where you are today? Yes. Most leaders who have that ability have EQ. Now, this is early in the show. It's early in the show, but I got to reference the person who's impacted millennial, right? And, years, thousands of years, hundreds of years. And that's Jesus Christ, right? He had an amazing level of EQ, right? Most guys with great EQ can tell great stories because they're able to say something that's relational to where you are, right? They call them parables. That's just a great story, right? So I don't want to get too deep into it, but man, this EQ thing is huge, and it will impact every relationship in your life, every single one.
Absolutely. Terry and I have over the years have been so impressed with the power of EQ that, we are the generation of Star Wars and the Jedi, right? And everybody remembers Luke Skywalker, the Jedi, and he just kind of wave his hand and then he'll make a person do something. They don't even know why they're doing it. We've called EQ the Jedi. Right. It's the Jedi power, right? When it comes to relationships, because EQ will go hand in hand with human nature and the way that people normally, naturally respond to things. So, let's dig into it. So what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, manage, utilize emotions effectively. It's more than just feeling emotions, but it's about recognizing and responding to them in a constructive way. Terry, what comes to mind for you when you hear that definition?
I'll say, right, being able to manage yourself in the moment, right? Most times, EQ, you will first receive the greatest benefit from EQ is when you're in a situation that has to be highly managed, right? Where there may be, and let's say even extreme excitement even. There still needs to be a level of EQ. Most times people relegate EQ to when there is stress or trauma or difficulty. It's any level of excitement, any level of input or influence where it's going to impact more than just you. Right now, ultimately, I'll say this: the first signs of EQ are going to happen when you're by yourself. Right? When there may be a situation and you may recognize, man, in the past I would feel fear, or I would feel anxiety, or I wouldn't know how to handle praise. EQ will help you effectively say, thank you, I appreciate that.
That's right.
Versus saying, oh no, it was nothing.
Right.
It was not. So because when you exercise a certain skill or ability or some subject matter expert level of giving or serving, people want to give you back praise about that, right? And so EQ will effectively allow you to say thank you and still say, I'm willing to give more, right? I'm not boasting about it, but hey, thank you. Right. So it covers a wide range of things.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I know what comes to mind for me is, so we're talking about how this can improve your leadership, right? This is all about emotional management. This is all about emotional management. And I don't know if people out there were like I was when I first learned this, in that you kind of know that you kind of need to manage your emotions, but you don't, until you start talking about it, you really don't understand the power of being able to manage your emotions in the moment, right? I'm just going to read the definition again. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, to manage, and utilize emotions effectively, right? It's more than just the feeling of the emotions. It's about recognizing them, number one, and then responding to them in a constructive way, right? So let's dive into some of the key components of emotional intelligence. Terry, you wanna take us there?
Sure. So I love this, right? I love this. So there are 5 key components, right? There's self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. So let's deal with the first one. Self-awareness, recognizing your own emotions and their impact. Right?
That's powerful. That's powerful, right? You can stop right there.
We can stop right. What are you doing? First of all, what are you doing to yourself with your emotions?
Whew. Yes. What are your emotions? What are your emotions doing to you? And then what are your emotions doing to other people?
Oh man.
So I heard this guy say this. If your wife burned the bacon,
I already know where this is going.
And you pick that bacon up and you say, what was you thinking? I don't want this old burnt bacon. And she just trying her best because she don't know how to cook. Versus, you know what, baby, I appreciate you doing the best that you can.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to grow together. That is a moment right there where you still have the same thought, the same emotion came up, but how you choose to handle it, makes a tremendous impact on the person that's in front of you.
Yes.
Right. And we go through these opportunities thousands of times a day in our mind.
Yes.
Something will happen. How many times have we heard somebody say, well, you made me do it. You made me upset. No, you had an emotion and you chose to respond to that emotion in a certain way.
Yep.
But what we're doing is trying to bring some awareness, some self-awareness to, you know what? These are my emotions. I got to own it. This is how I feel in this moment.
Yeah.
Right. And then understanding your strengths and weaknesses. That's an amazing statement, because there are certain emotional strengths that I have. Then there are certain emotional weaknesses that I have, and being able to label them and recognize them help me to manage myself in the moment better. Right. So now that's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think it's huge. No, I think it's huge, right? Because here's the truth of the matter. most emotions and things that we are experiencing internally, they are a result of past
Mm,
interactions, right?
that's right.
Right, Ralph, I remember you shared something with me years ago, and I try my best to um, keep this top of mind when I'm dealing with my intimate relationships. And then, of course, it does, bubble out from there. But you have to understand there is a piece of yarn. And when
Mm,
you pull that yarn
mm, mm.
and you
Yes.
start pulling it up, man, sometimes that piece of yarn is attached to some things you have no idea
Yes. Yes.
what's on the other end of that piece of yarn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
right, we are complex, right? Human beings are complex. And that's why you can say, let's use the bacon example. You can say something about how that meal was cooked, right? You have no idea really what's attached to that bacon.
Mm. That's right. That's right.
Right.
That's right.
What experience that person had, that maybe their mom had, that maybe was transferred to them because of some experience, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not to say that we're going to walk around on eggshells. That's not what we're saying. We're
That's
not
right.
saying that we're not going to be ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
what we are saying is that we're going to be cognizant to the fact that, okay, I can communicate in a way that's truthful,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because at the core of it all,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be truth,
Yeah. That's
right?
right. That's right.
But I can communicate with you in a truthful manner, but in a kind manner,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
In a clear manner, in
Mm-hmm.
a manner that recognizes, okay, this may be an area of difficulty or
Mm-hmm.
an area of stress or anxiety that I don't necessarily want to provoke
Mm-hmm.
in you, but what I want to do is we still talk about it, but it creates an atmosphere of ease where
Yeah.
now, at the end of the day, and we say this all the time, this is a safe place,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I believe what EQ does, first off, is it creates a safe place. And I'm going to say this, right? It's very important. I was doing a devotion a few weeks ago, and I love the topic. And the topic was basically, you know what? Give yourself a break,
Mm-hmm.
right? That was the gist of it. Give yourself. We know high performers, we struggle with this.
Mm-hmm.
High performers struggle with giving yourself a break,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that perfection, man, and you've been pursuing it, and every possible thing that you do, man, from tying your shoes, right? The knots got to be perfect, right? you know, all the way to, hey, you got this business deal going and
Mm.
you want to make sure that all the, I's are dotted and T's are crossed
Right.
and there's nothing missed in there. At the end of the day, right? Life is a journey, right?
Yes.
Learn from that journey,
Mm-hmm.
right? Give yourself a break to say, hey, you know what? I don't know everything. Some
Mm-hmm.
things I am going to learn in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And when you recognize it, right, that self-awareness, okay, this is an opportunity for me to grow.
Mm-hmm.
That, in my opinion, is one of the greatest measures of EQ.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give myself an opportunity to grow in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that it's okay what happened, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to beat myself up over it. What I
Right.
am going to do is I'm going to learn from that.
Right.
These are levels of EQ, because here's what you have to understand. It's critical to understand this. You are not going to treat anybody else better than you treat yourself.
Amen. Amen.
hey, it's just, you're not going to treat anybody better than how you treat yourself. So if you can exercise EQ with yourself first, and then things will blossom outside of that. So Ralph,
Yeah.
what do you think about that?
Yeah. No. Self-awareness is the key, right? It is the initial piece of all of this. If you don't understand how you're responding to your own emotions, you can't manage them. You can't regulate them. You don't know how it's impacting anybody else, right? It is the foundational key of emotional intelligence, right? And I love the part about the emotional strengths, weaknesses, and triggers, right? Understanding when somebody says something, it triggers you. Acknowledging that, having self-awareness around that gives you the ability to respond better. But when you don't even know it and you just react instead of respond, right?
Right.
You could be just leaving a trail of damage in broken relationships your whole
It's
life.
just it's just IEDs all over the place.
It's just all over the place. Landmines all over the place. Somebody say something to you about the bacon. Yeah, you sound like my mama. Yeah, and that kind of stuff. And you don't even realize that that's an emotional trigger. So self-awareness is the beginning. The foundational beginning of EQ, and then let's go to the next step. Self-regulation. They build on top of each other, right? Once you're aware, then you can regulate. You can't regulate anything that you're not aware of. Right. We talk about you can't manage what you don't expect. Right. You can't regulate anything that you're not aware of. So being able to manage your emotions effectively, especially in stressful situations, and that's where it's really the most beneficial. Right. Is when you get into a really stressful situation, because now I'm aware that I'm in these emotions. I'm upset. My heart is racing. I'm now taking inventory of my emotions in this moment. What am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it?
I love that, Ralph. What I hear, the first word that came to my mind, and this is kind of goes back to one of the books that we referenced a while ago, but I hear, in order to self-regulate, you got to have some boundaries.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So okay, bacon. Let me put a boundary around bacon.
That's right.
So what? And again, so let me make this clear, right? Let's say that there is a trigger, right? And I'm just using bacon. It's a funny thing, right? So what I'm going to say is, no matter what the boundary that I have around bacon is, I'm going to always put it in a sandwich. Right? Because if I don't, it'll cover it up. Let me mix it with the eggs. Let me put some mustard on it. What I'm saying is that create a framework, right? If you understand that there is a trigger, have a strategy and a framework that says, okay, when I walk into this situation, right? And let's bring it on home, right? There's a difficult relationship that you have to deal with. You can't avoid it. Right? You can avoid it, right? It could be in your home. It could be at work. It could be at the gym, whatever, right? It's just a difficult exchange for whatever reason. Well, go into that situation with a strategy. Okay. When person A does this, I'm going to nod, smile, thank you, have a great day, whatever, right? Have a strategy. Be genuine with it, right? Because the ideal is that we're trying to create a connect. Now, granted, that connect could, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, in reality, so I'll say this, this may help with this, right? There are basically 5 type of relationships that, and I didn't coin this. I heard that. I'm gonna give a shout out to, gosh, I can't remember the pastors at Grace over in Humble. The Jones brothers, right? So he basically said this, right? And so understanding that not every relationship is going to be at the maximum level, right? So he said there are contacts. Those are just hi and bye, right? There are associates, right? Those are people that, okay, you got something in common with. Hey, man, let's go grab a sandwich. You have partners. Those are your ride or die. Hey, I got you. So now, you go to lunch and you forget your wallet. You know what they'll say? I got it.
Yeah.
And they won't expect you to pay it back, right?
That's right.
They got you.
Yeah.
And now, if you notice, we're just, each of these relationships keeps getting more intimate. Then you have mentors. Those are the people that, who are willing to invest in you. They're going to give of their time, their information, things that they've learned, right? And then lastly, you have mentees. That's when you're giving it back. So understand where in these relationships, because at the core of EQ is relationships. That's really, that's at the core of it, right?
That's right.
Again, right. Starting with the relationship with yourself.
That's right. Start with yourself first. Yep.
Right. And
Yeah.
so understanding that, right? And so just circling back around to those strategies, understand where that person is, in those, 5 levels of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And every person in your life, family members fall into that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody falls into one of those areas. And so create a strategy and boundaries on how you're going to manage those relationships to be most successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 So the next, to keep it moving forward, the next point was, I believe, of social awareness. Is that right?
Yep.
As
Yep.
the
Yep.
other key
Yep.
component. So think about the progression there. Self-awareness. First, you realize, you become aware of your own emotions. Number 2 is self-regulation. Now you are regulating those emotions that you are now aware of. And then there's social awareness, which is understanding the emotions, perspectives, and needs of others. So this is, how is what I'm doing impacting you? Right? So you start with your own awareness, your own regulation, and now you are aware of how what you do impacts somebody else. I notice when I say this like that, that person backs up away from me. Okay, is it I got bad breath, or am I being a little bit too forceful? Right? I notice that when I get passionate, my voice gets really loud and people start to not talk. Right? Understanding what's happening in the space around you as a result of how you are regulating your emotions causes you to regulate your emotions differently. Right? And this is a very, very big key, because let's take it back to leadership. If you're trying to lead anybody, you have to understand how you come across to them, because you want to influence them to go into a certain direction. It's not that, I'm just going to be whatever I'm going to be and you just going to have to follow me. No, people are not going to follow you. They may follow you because of your role, your title, right? But they're going to undermine you every second that they can, right? Because people want to follow those who they really believe in and who they connect with, which is why emotional intelligence is so important. But what comes to mind for you, Terry, on social awareness?
Man, you just got to read the room.
Mm.
And I'm going to take it back to those who know me, at least my past, right? And Ralph, they know this about you. We spend a lot of time doing music,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you start playing a song and you're like, man, this is flat. We're like, hey, take this to the bridge. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah,
right. You got to be able to read the room, right?
Yeah.
Is what you're doing impacting the room in a positive way, in a negative way? Is it neutral? Is it neutral, right? Sometimes people are just neutral, and that's okay if that's what you're shooting for. But you got to be able to read the room. What's your motivation? Why are you doing what you're doing? And I'm getting a little ahead, but you got to read the room, man.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that, right? When you walk in the room, what does the room do?
Yep.
You haven't said anything, and the room is doing something.
That's right. So the next point is the relationship management, the motivation. Terry, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So here's the deal, right? Why are you doing what you're doing? Right? What is your goal? Right? Who are you trying to influence? Why? What kind of energy are you coming into this relationship with? Right? All those things matter, Are you persistent? Do you engage one day and then the next day you aren't engaged? Right? Do you if you're leading a team, are you really, engaged with your team? And is it only here's so things start running through my mind. Is it only because you want an outcome that's going to benefit you? Then once the outcome is achieved, everybody on the team is pretty much ghosted. Right. But we see these high levels of engagement when there's a big need or a big carrot, something on the other end. Right. What's your motivation? And I think that's key, right? Because in order to maintain that relationship, build it in a positive way. And ultimately, and Ralph, I love you, you say this all the time. Trust is built by what?
Oh, trust is built by the drop, the droplet.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But it's lost by the what?
by the bucket full. Yeah, 100%.
Trust is it's a slow trickle, man.
It's a very slow trickle.
Trust
Yeah,
is a slow trickle, but you
yeah,
can lose that trust in an instant.
yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. What is your motivation? Because again, EQ is all about me building relationships, right?
Yes.
It just so happens that you start to build this relationship by starting with yourself first, right? But what
God,
is
that
your
is
what is your motivation? What is your motivation
yes.
in this relationship? Is it to build an effective communication with the person? Is it to lead them? Is it to help them? Right? Understanding your motivation for this relationship is key. And then finally, the last characteristic is the empathy. Right now, leading with empathy towards other situations, without
Hey,
judgment. Mm-hmm.
Ralph, do you mind? A story just came back to mind for me, and I shared this with you maybe about 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is about the motivation aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just real quick.
Sure.
So, Shamika and I go out to lunch, and I'm sitting in this restaurant, and I look across the restaurant. I see this young lady, and I'm like, man, she looks familiar. Where do I know her from? And I'm like, was it softball? Because with the
Mm-hmm.
kids, with Liz, been at a lot of softball games, met a lot of parents, met a lot of players, and I'm like, I know this person from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this individual makes their way over to me, and they go, "Did you used to work at so and so?" I'm like, "Yes." And she went into this story. She said, "You may not remember this, but you gave me a book."
Mm-hmm.
And I told you I was studying for my PMP. And you said, "I have a book that may help you." She said, "You gave me that book. I went on to get my certification, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing so and so today."
Mm-hmm.
She said, "I still have that book. Thank you so much." Now, she was fairly new into into corporate America at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember thinking to myself, I want to invest in this young person.
Mm-hmm.
She's hungry. Um, she's eager, and that exchange could have been could have went 10 different ways, right? I could
Mm-hmm.
have used the relationship to whatever, benefit myself, or try to get the person to do work for me, or whatever it was. But
Mm-hmm.
my motivation was, how can I help you get to where you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably 8-9 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
That seed that was sown into that person's life,
Mm-hmm.
you have no idea, right? Going back to the one of the first points, which was, is what you're doing impacting only today,
Mm-hmm.
this moment, or does it go beyond you? I don't, man, that seed of encouragement and information, it's probably, I'm sure it has generational impact, because she had her son with her. I met her husband,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
if our motivations, our desire to facilitate and manage these relationships are not necessarily based on what we can get,
Mm-hmm.
but about getting others to where they want to get,
Mm-hmm.
man, the payback
Yes.
is far more worth than what you can get.
Absolutely.
We gotta think bigger,
Absolutely.
broader, right?
Absolutely.
So I just
Absolutely.
wanted to share that story.
No, that's good. That's good. That is great. That is great. So the last key component of emotional intelligence is empathy, which is the ability to relate to other situation without judgment. Terry, you want to talk about why is that so important? Why is that such a key component?
Look, it goes back to that piece of yarn or thread. We just don't know all of what has driven a person to do or say what they've done. Right now, that does not mean that there's a lack of accountability. That does not mean that. What it
Mm-hmm.
simply means is that I'm going to look at this outside of what I believe, isn't necessarily a right or wrong kind of scenario, right? And what we want to do is help a person grow. Empathy says, yeah, there may have been a shortcoming, or may have been, let's just say, a project that didn't execute the way it should have. What can I do, and what information can I give in a way that's going to help you grow, right? Because at the end of the day, our goal as leaders is to move a person beyond where they think they are, right? Sometimes, again, right, because of how people see themselves, and I'm sure there are tons of stories. I heard, this is funny, right? I heard a story the other day. Jimmy Jam, right, was explaining how, and again, I don't want to offend anybody here, but Prince was like, bro, okay, you're playing the music, but I need you dancing. I need you singing. I need you doing all this stuff, right? And here's a simply thing what he said. Prince saw me greater than what I saw myself. It's just that simple, right? We've all been in those situations, right? Where folks have challenged me and said, Terry, you're doing great here, but I believe you can do more. But the way that's carried out is what's important. To your point, Ralph, and we say this all the time when it comes to leadership, you can push a person, you can pull a person, you can drag them, or you can lead them. And I believe one of the key elements of empathy is leading a person to that next version, or that improved version of themselves, while recognizing, okay, hey, there's some opportunity for growth, right? We want to be, we've heard this, sir, before, clear is kind. Let's be clear, right? But the goal is not to have you walk away from this exchange feeling worse, right? Walk away from this exchange feeling better. We're going to, point out there's opportunity, right? And so, and Ralph, I'll kind of tee this up because I want to hear what you have to say about this, but there's a book that you referenced that when I was working on a team with you, the Effective Manager, and there were some tools that they used in there to help a person clearly see this is where we are. This is where we need to get, but we want to do it in a constructive way. And I think empathy allows for that. So am I on track, off track? What do you think?
No, I think you're on track. I think, for me, when I think about empathy, what comes to mind in the context of emotional intelligence is, okay, I'm aware of my emotions now. I am regulating my emotions now. I'm aware of how how I respond to my emotions impact those around me. I know what my motivation is for this relationship. So now I'm going to lead with your perspective before mine. Right.
I love that. Right. I love that.
So empathy is not just responding based on how you feel, but taking into account how they feel. Yes. And responding in like kind. So in other words, and it's so true. No matter how many times we go through this, human nature is to only respond to our perspective only.
Yep.
90% of people always feel like they're a victim. You always, well, why they do that to me? Okay, I'm driving down the road. Somebody cut me off. Oh man, they cut me off. I'm the victim, right? I remember, Terry, this real life story. You and I were living in St. Louis. I was at WashU. You called me and told me that somebody cut you off on the highway. Remember that? The guy had a stroke or a heart attack or something. Right. And wind up, I don't know. You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember. Yes. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
So you can be mad, at the fact that somebody did something, or you could be like, man, I wonder if that person's okay.
Yes. Right? Yeah. Oh man, you took me back. Yeah. That person almost killed me.
Yes.
Yes. And just to kind it turned out okay, but man, the person sideswiped me, and all I can remember was saying Jesus, and I'm fighting this car. And I stopped parallel rather to the concrete barrier. And to your point, Ralph, my initial emotion was, what in the world? And then when I went back to look, that person was hanging out of the car unconscious. Yeah. Come to find out, they had an issue. Right. But to your point, I think that's a great point. Yeah.
Right. So taking the time to, take a step back. Don't lead with your initial emotion. Figure out what's going on with that individual first, and then make a thoughtful response that benefits you both in the right direction.
That's great.
That is to me what empathy means in this context.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think that's great.
Too many times when we're not aware of our emotions, we just pop off on the first thing that comes to mind. Right.
Yeah.
We don't regulate it. We don't have any idea of how it's going to affect those socially around us. We're not even taking into account what type of relationship we're trying to cultivate. What's our motivation in the moment? Therefore, we don't have any empathy.
Yeah.
Right. But if you do those other things, and then you understand the other person's perspective before you respond, now you can effectively impact somebody's life, if that makes sense.
Oh, no, I think that is great. I think that is great because, again, right, you don't know what's at the other end of that piece of yarn.
You don't.
And
You
ultimately,
really
right, you want to move them forward in a positive
Yes.
way. So
Yes.
what's going on?
Yes.
Why is, can I help? Help me understand.
Help me understand. That's my favorite term I like to do, especially when I'm in a place where my emotions are telling me something else. I'll be like, okay, well, help me understand help me see what I'm not seeing right now. Right. Because then that'll help me to lead with empathy. Right. That'll help me to self-regulate my emotions in the moment. I can't tell you how many times developing EQ has saved me when I was wrong. Right. Your initial reaction is to fire back off at somebody because you thought they did something unfair to you. But because I took the time to, okay, let me calm myself down because I'm getting a little bit emotional. Okay. Let me make sure I speak calmly to this person and not raise my voice. Right. That's social awareness, self-regulation. Okay. This is a person that I know that I want to build this relationship with. I need to influence them. That's my motivation. Okay, so help me understand what I'm missing here because this is what I'm seeing right now. And then they say something that is like, oh man, I didn't even see that. I had no idea. Right. And now I'm able to manage that moment to a positive outcome. Whereas if I had just fired off of my initial response, I could have created an enemy, right? Built a wall instead of a bridge. Right. And you're always trying to build bridges when you're trying to influence people, not build walls.
Yeah, you didn't bless me right there. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. That's good stuff.
So this is a great place for us to end today. And next episode, we'll be talking about the importance of emotional intelligence in your professional life and in your personal life and some of the outcomes that come along with that. So until next time, be good, be blessed, be safe, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Sovereignty Podcast. If this content blessed or helped you in any kind of way, support us today by subscribing to our YouTube channel, clicking the like button for this episode, and sharing this content with others that you think it will help. Until next time, stay safe, peace, and blessings.